Keanu Reeves unexpectedly walks into a small Minnesota diner, setting the stage for an extraordinary encounter. What unfolds next will leave you amazed at the power of kindness and human connection. The bell above the door of the North Star Diner chimed its cheerful tone, cutting through the lazy hum of the air conditioning. A wave of scorching Minnesota summer heat rolled in, carrying with it an unexpected visitor. Heads turned, conversations halted mid-sentence, and forks clattered onto plates as patrons recognized the tall, bearded man who had just stepped inside. Keanu Reeves, Hollywood icon, and the internet's favorite nice guy, stood in the doorway, his presence as surreal as a mirage in the desert. He looked around, slightly disoriented, as if he had stumbled into the small-town diner by accident. As Keanu made his way to an empty booth, whispers rippled through the diner like a stone dropped in a still pond. Phones appeared from pockets and purses, their cameras aimed discreetly, and not so discreetly, at the unexpected celebrity in their midst. The ordinary Tuesday afternoon lull had suddenly become extraordinary. In the quiet anticipation, life in the diner carried on. Burgers sizzled on the grill, ice clinked in glasses of sweet tea, and the gentle hum of conversation slowly resumed. Yet there was an undeniable sense of excitement in the air, a feeling that something important was about to happen. At a nearby table, a young mother struggled to calm her agitated daughter. The little girl, no more than 5 years old, with pigtails and a pink unicorn shirt, was in the throes of a full-blown tantrum. Her face was flushed, tears streaming down her cheeks as she pounded her small fists on the table. "Emily, please," the mother pleaded, her voice a mix of exhaustion and embarrassment. "We're in public. You need to calm down." But Emily was beyond reason. With a defiant shriek, she grabbed her plastic cup of chocolate milk and hurled it with all her might. The cup arsed through the air, its contents spilling in a brown cascade. Time seemed to slow as all eyes in the diner tracked the cup's trajectory. It sailed past the mother's horrified reach, over the next table, and landed with a splash right in Keanu Reeves's lap. The diner fell silent. The only sound was the soft plop of the now empty cup as it rolled off Keanu's table and onto the floor. Chocolate milk dripped from the edge of the table, forming a puddle at his feet. The actor sat motionless, looking down at his now-soaked jeans with an unreadable expression. The mother's face drained of color. "Oh my God," she whispered, mortified. She scrambled to her feet, napkins in hand, ready to apologize profusely to the celebrity her daughter had just doused in chocolate milk. Emily, suddenly aware of what she had done, stopped crying. Her eyes widened as she looked from her mother to the strange man covered in her drink. The diner patrons held their collective breath, phones at the ready to capture whatever happened next. This moment could define the entire encounter. Would Keanu Reeves, known for his kindness and patience, live up to his reputation? Or would the stress of travel and an unexpected dairy bath push him to his limits? The mother now stood frozen, halfway between her table and Keanu, torn between rushing to apologize and shielding her daughter from potential backlash. Keanu slowly raised his head, his eyes moving from the spreading stain on his jeans to the little girl who had caused it. Emily stared back, her lower lip trembling, tears welling up once again in her eyes. The mother opened her mouth to speak, but before she could utter a word, Keanu's expression began to change. The diner collectively held its breath. Keanu's brow furrowed slightly, and for a moment, a flicker of something unidentifiable passed across his face. Was it annoyance? Anger? The mother's heart raced as she braced herself for the worst. "Well," Keanu said, his voice warm and tinged with amusement, "I guess someone wasn't too happy with their drink, huh?" The collective tension in the diner burst like a bubble. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd, and the mother's shoulders sagged with relief. Emily, confused by this turn of events, tilted her head and studied Keanu with newfound curiosity as he reached for some napkins, still smiling. The other diners watched in amazement. This simple act of grace and humor in the face of an awkward situation was transforming the atmosphere from one of shock and embarrassment to something different, something warm and unexpectedly joyful. The mother, realizing she was still frozen halfway between tables, rushed forward with her own handful of napkins. "I'm so sorry," she began, her words tumbling out in a rush. "She's been having a rough day," and Keanu waved off her apologies with a gentle hand. "No worries," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "It's just a little milk. Besides," he added with a wink toward Emily, "I needed to cool off in this heat anyway." As the initial excitement began to die down, curious patrons couldn't help but wonder, what was Keanu Reeves doing in their small-town Minnesota diner on a sweltering summer afternoon? The answer, it turned out, was surprisingly mundane. Keanu had been passing through on his way to a film location, taking the scenic route to enjoy the American heartland. His car had needed a quick checkup at a local garage, and he'd wandered into the North Star diner to kill some time while waiting for the mechanic to finish. "I'm supposed to meet my driver here in about an hour," Keanu explained to the waitress who'd come to help clean up the spill. "Thought I'd grab a bite to eat and soak in some local color." He glanced down at his milk-soaked jeans and grinned. "I guess I got more local color than I bargained for." As the diner slowly returned to its normal rhythm, albeit with an undercurrent of excitement, Keanu's attention turned back to Emily and her mother. The little girl had calmed down considerably, her earlier tantrum forgotten in the wake of the milk-throwing incident. Now she watched Keanu with wide, curious eyes, half hidden behind her mother's arm. The mother, for her part, still looked mortified. "I'm Sarah," she said, attempting a smile, "and this is Emily. I can't apologize enough for what happened." Keanu shook his head, his expression kind. "Really, it's okay. These things happen." He paused, then made a decision that would change the course of the afternoon. "Would you two like to join me? Seems like I could use some acquaintances, and I've got some time to spare." Sarah blinked, surprised by the offer. She glanced around the diner, acutely aware of the other patrons trying, and failing, to pretend they weren't eavesdropping. Are you sure? We wouldn't want to impose." "Not at all," Keanu said, gesturing to the empty seats across from him. "I'd welcome the company." Hesitantly, Sarah guided Emily into the booth, sliding in after her. The situation felt surreal. Here they were sitting across from Keanu Reeves in a small-town diner, Emily's spilled milk still drying on his jeans. An awkward silence fell over the table. Sarah fidgeted with a napkin, unsure of what to say. Emily, her earlier shyness evaporating, stared openly at Keanu. "Now, why don't you tell me what was bothering you earlier?" he asked. "It must have been pretty important to make you want to throw your milk." Emily launched into a detailed explanation about how she wanted a stuffed unicorn, but got a cat instead, and how unfair it was that she couldn't have ice cream for lunch. Sarah watched in amazement as Keanu listened intently, nodding and asking questions as if Emily's tale of woe was the most important thing in the world. Gradually, Sarah felt herself relaxing, the initial shock and embarrassment of the milk incident fading, replaced by a sense of wonder at the unexpected turn their day had taken. As Emily's story wound down, Keanu turned his attention to Sarah. "And how about you?" he asked kindly. "Looks like it's been a rough day for both of you." Sarah hesitated, unused to having someone, let alone a Hollywood star, take an interest in her problems. But there was something in Keanu's eyes, a genuine warmth and curiosity that made her want to open up. It's been a challenging time, she admitted. Emily's father left us about 6 months ago. It was sudden, and well, we're still adjusting. Keanu nodded sympathetically. This must be tough for both of you. The simple acknowledgement, free of pity or judgment, was all it took. Before Sarah knew it, she found herself sharing more than she had with anyone in months. She told Keanu about the struggles of Sutton's single motherhood, about trying to balance work and children, about the guilt she felt over Emily's increasing tantrums. "I know she's acting out because she's hurting," Sarah said, absently stroking Emily's hair as the little girl coloured on a placemat. "But sometimes it's hard to remember that when we're in public and she's throwing milk at strangers." She gave a watery laugh. Keanu listened attentively, occasionally asking a question or offering a word of encouragement. As Sarah talked, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. Here, in this unexpected moment with an unlikely confidant, she found a safe space to voice the fears and frustrations she'd been bottling up for months. As Sarah's story unfolded, the other diners had long since given up pretending not to listen. The North Star had fallen into a hushed silence. All eyes on the booth where a Hollywood star sat comforting a struggling single mother and her daughter. It was a scene no one would have believed if they hadn't witnessed it themselves. In the midst of this unexpected stillness, the actor leaned forward, his eyes filled with compassion. His voice, usually projected for cameras and audiences, was now softened to a gentle murmur that barely carried beyond their booth. The raw honesty in Sarah's words had clearly touched something deep within him, evoking memories of his own past struggles. "You know," he began, "I lost someone years ago. I remember that pain, and I'm guessing you might be suffering even more, given that he was your husband of many years. I may not know exactly what you're going through, but I understand loss and the struggle to find your footing afterward." Sarah looked up, surprised. "Really? I didn't know that." Keanu nodded, a shadow passing over his features. "When I was young, I lost my best friend, River Phoenix. It was sudden, unexpected. And years later, I lost my partner, Jennifer Syme, and our daughter." "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I had no idea." Keanu gave a small, sad smile. "It's not something I talk about often. But I remember feeling lost, angry, confused, like the world had tilted on its axis, and I couldn't find my balance." Sarah nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "That's exactly how it feels sometimes. The thing is," Keanu continued, his gaze steady and kind, "you never really get over it. You just learn to carry it. And some days it feels lighter than others." As they talked, a connection formed between them. Two souls who had experienced profound loss, finding unexpected understanding in a small-town diner. Emily, who had been quietly colouring, began to fidget. The emotional weight of the conversation was lost on her, but the lack of attention was not. She tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, I'm bored," she whined. "Can we go now?" Sarah turned to her daughter, trying to keep her voice patient. "Not yet, sweetie. We're talking. Why don't you colour some more?" Emily's face scrunched up, a warning sign Sarah knew all too well. "But I don't want to colour. I want to go." Keanu watched the interaction closely, noting the tension creeping back into Sarah's shoulders. He could see the tantrum building, threatening to undo the calm they'd managed to achieve. Then, in a move that surprised everyone, including himself, Keanu stood up. "Hey, Emily," he said, his voice gentle but excited. "Want to go on a little adventure with me?" Emily's impending tantrum halted, curiosity overtaking her frustration. "An adventure?" Sarah looked alarmed. "Oh, you don't have to." But Keanu waved off her concern with a smile. "It's okay. Sometimes a change of scenery is all we need. We'll stay where you can see us." Before anyone could protest further, Keanu held out his hand to Emily. "What do you say, kiddo? Want to be my exploring partner?" Emily's eyes lit up. She looked to her mother for permission, practically bouncing with excitement. Sarah, still stunned by this turn of events, nodded hesitantly. With a whoop of joy, Emily took Keanu's hand, and the actor led her toward the back of the diner, where a door stood slightly ajar, revealing a glimpse of an alley beyond. The other patrons watched in amazement as Keanu Reeves, Hollywood star, led a little girl on an adventure through the diner's back alley. Sarah half rose from her seat, torn between following them and respecting this unexpected moment. Outside, the summer heat hit them like a wall. The alley was narrow, lined with dumpsters and stacked crates. To most, it would seem an uninspiring sight, but Keanu looked down at Emily with a twinkle in his eye. "You know what this is?" he asked conspiratorially. Emily shook her head, eyes wide with anticipation. "This," Keanu said, gesturing grandly, "is a secret passage. Only the bravest explorers know about it." Emily gasped, her imagination instantly transforming the mundane alley into a world of adventure. For the next couple of minutes, the unlikely pair were lost in conversation. Emily's eyes sparkled as she shared her dreams of becoming a veterinarian, her love for strawberry ice cream, and her dislike of Brussels sprouts. Keanu listened intently, chuckling at her animated descriptions and offering encouraging words about her aspirations. Time seemed to fly by as they chatted, the cool night air a refreshing break from the diner's warmth. As their conversation naturally wound down, they both realized it was time to head back. Keanu reached for the door handle but paused, looking down at Emily. "Ready to go back in, boss?" Emily took a deep breath, squaring her tiny shoulders. "Ready," she said with newfound confidence. As Keanu and Emily re-entered the diner, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Sarah stood up, her eyes searching her daughter's face for signs of distress. Instead, she found a calm determination she hadn't seen in months. Just then, Keanu's phone began to ring. The call represented his ride, his return to the world of Hollywood and celebrity, an escape from this unexpected detour into small-town drama. Keanu looked at the phone, then at Sarah and Emily. The mother and daughter stood hand in hand, hope and uncertainty warring in their eyes. With a gentle smile, Keanu answered the call. "Hey, yeah, I'm ready. Be out in 5, he said into the phone, his voice tinged with a hint of regret. As he ended the call, he turned to Sarah and Emily. "Well, looks like my time here is up," he said, his tone warm but tinged with sadness. "But before I go, I want you both to know how much this afternoon has meant to me." He knelt down to Emily's level. "Be a good girl, okay?" Emily nodded solemnly, then surprised everyone by throwing her arms around Keanu's neck in a tight hug. Keanu returned the embrace, his eyes misty. Standing up, he turned to Sarah. "You're doing an amazing job," he said softly. "It's not easy, but you're stronger than you know." Sarah, overcome with emotion, could only nod as she wiped away a tear. The other patrons, sensing the imminent departure of their unexpected celebrity guest, began to approach hesitantly, clutching napkins, menus, and anything else that could serve as an impromptu autograph book. Keanu, ever gracious, spent a few minutes signing autographs and taking selfies with the starstruck diners. He made sure to thank each person, leaving them with a personal word or two. As the crowd around him thinned, Keanu made his way back to his original table. He pulled out his wallet and placed several bills on the table, more than enough to cover his uneaten meal and Sarah's bill. "This should take care of things," he said to the waitress, who was staring at him in awe. "And please add a generous tip for yourself. You've been wonderful." With a final wave to the diner at large, Keanu made his way to the door. He paused for a moment, looking back at Sarah and Emily. "Take care of each other," he said with a warm smile. "And who knows, maybe our paths will cross again someday." And with that, Keanu Reeves stepped out of the North Star Diner and into the waiting car, leaving behind a wake of amazement, gratitude, and newfound hope.